Hey there and welcome to the channel. In today's video we are going to be going over the latest 13 apps for the super investors, but that is something that I track every quarter and I think we can learn a lot from. It is very valuable for us as investors to see what the big guys are doing and see if we can get any stock ideas from them. The problem with most of the best investors in the world is that they understand that inactivity is actually a very good thing when you are a value investor. So they aren't necessarily really active from quarter to quarter. So a lot of the times you're just seeing a similar portfolio to last quarter. Now the first portfolio that I take a look at is of the Daily Journal, which was actually managed by the late Charlie Munger. Now I'm not sure who is actually managing the portfolio now, but obviously it's not Charlie. And true to Charlie's nature, it hasn't been touched. So no new moves for the Daily Journal Corporation, which is something that we are very used to seeing. Now another disciple of Charlie and Warren is Guy Spear of Aquamarine Capital. And true to his masters, he didn't do anything the last quarter, which is something that we've gotten used to seeing. I've been tracking his portfolio for a couple of years now, and you are really surprised when you see a movement there. Next up is a Canadian investor called Francois Rohon of Givney Capital, which has become one of my favorite investors. And if you haven't read his shareholders letters, I would recommend going to givneycapital.com and reading all of them. You really learn a lot. But as we can see here, there are some inflows and outflows from his funds, since I do believe it's an open fund, so he has to respond to investors both putting in and withdrawing money. And he did add 42% to a company called Fiserv, which I haven't heard of before, and 4,000% to a company called MedPace Holdings. Now apparently Fiserv is a company that provides payment and financial services technology worldwide, and if you scroll down here on QuickFS, we can see that at least for me personally, I would not be interested in the company, seeing that the return on invested capital is way too low. The other company called MedPace Holdings is a smaller company with a market cap of only $12 billion, and it's in the medical device business. And if we scroll down here to the key ratios on QuickFS, we can see the company has a pretty strong return on invested capital, but I was kind of surprised to see the P ratio for MedPace, since I do know that Francois Rohon doesn't like to pay more than about 15 to 20 PE, but MedPace is not a company that I would be personally interested in. Although they do have decent fundamentals, it's just not a business that I think is fun to track for years, because I do think it's very important if you are going to invest in a company for, let's say, 10 or 15 years, you have to be interested in what the company is doing. Otherwise, it's just going to be a chore to track them every quarter and listen to the earnings call. Next up we have Chuck Agre, which is also one of my favorite investors, but I would say Chuck Agre, Terry Smith and Dev Kantasaria are probably the three investors that my investment style is based on. Because all of these investors, they do like to buy high quality compounders, and they are ready to pay a little bit more to own quality companies and to be fairly concentrated, which is something that I have personally implemented in my portfolio. Now, I was a little bit surprised to see the biggest reduction in the Chuck Agre portfolio, and of course Chuck Agre is not the one managing the portfolio. He has his two lieutenants that do that, but they sold 26% of Visa, which is something that's surprising to see. Now, Robert Vinal is one of those investors that is super concentrated, and I track mostly for fun, since I probably won't be trying to copy his investments. Now, Robert has been reducing his stake in Meta by 26% and Salesforce by 36%, and he has been adding to his Carvana position, which I've mentioned before is very strange. I don't know what he sees in the company, but he is a professional investor and I'm not, so he's probably seeing something that I can't understand. Next up we have our deep value guy out of Canada, which is Prem Watsa of Fairfax Financial Holdings. But his deep value style is not something that I implement personally in my portfolio, but nevertheless it's interesting to track. But as we can see here, he has been adding to his Orla mining position and is still holding 11% of his portfolio in BlackBerry, which is something that I don't understand, and still has 22% of his portfolio in Micron, which a lot of the super investors have been exiting for the past couple of quarters. And Prem's largest position is in Occidental Petroleum, which Warren Buffett also has a big position in, so that is probably one of the best oil companies in the market today, if you look at the fact that both of these great investors are invested very heavily in the company. Next up we have Mohnish Pabrai, but he keeps digging into coal companies. We can see his latest buy is Warrior Met Coal, and he's been adding to his ARC resources. But the best way to track Mohnish is of course through ticker.com, since he has a lot of international holdings that you don't see in the 13Fs. And we can see here that Reisas is still by far his biggest position at 34% of the portfolio. Now the rest of the portfolio seems to be some kind of value play where he's buying a dollar bill for 50 cents, which he probably plans on selling once those companies reach their intrinsic value. But Mohnish doesn't seem to be planning on holding these companies for a long time, since they are not really high quality companies. Next up we have the British Warren Buffett, Terry Smith out of the UK, which I'm personally invested with, and I was really happy to see that Terry keeps adding to his Fortinet position, which is a company that I've talked about on this channel and is, in my opinion, the most high quality company in the cybersecurity space. And for me, seeing that Terry is adding it to the main portfolio and keeps building his position is very positive, since Terry is an investor that I highly respect. Another investor that I like to track for fun is Michael Burry, since there's no way for me to understand what he's doing, but he's been adding to his Chinese holdings, Alibaba and JD, and as we can see here, they've become the biggest positions in his portfolio. And I was kind of surprised to see that Michael Burry only has $94 million under management, which is strange, seeing that he is a very famous investor from the movie Big Short. Next up we have the GOAT out of Omaha, Warren Buffett of Berkshire Hathaway, with his $350 billion portfolio, and he keeps adding to his position in the oil companies that have the largest exposure to the Permian Basin, which are Chevron and Occidental Petroleum. And if we look here, we can see that his stake in Occidental is almost worth $15 billion, and Occidental Petroleum only has a market cap of about 53 billion, which means that Warren owns almost 30% of the company, which is quite a lot. So I think it's safe to say that Warren is very bullish on oil and very bullish on the Permian Basin. Next up we have a famous investor, which is probably the most concentrated investor that you find on Dataroma. He is called Norbert Liu of Punchcard Management. He is managing $381 million, but still really only has 3 companies that he's invested in, Berkshire Hathaway, Ally Financial and Winnebago Industries. And if we look at the activity for Norbert Liu for the past 4 years, we can see that he's only bought into 3 new companies and only sold completely out of 2, which is not a lot of activity. Moving on to another great investor, Dev Kantasaria of Valley Forge Capital Management, which is very concentrated with only 8 stocks and $3.5 billion under management. We can see that his biggest holding is FICO, and the portfolio is constructed of very high quality companies like S&P Global, MasterCard, Moody's, Intuit, Visa, Aspen, Technology and ASML Holding. But that is an investor that I'm personally trying to imitate by being fine with paying a little bit more for high quality compounders and holding them for a long time and trying to turn the portfolio over as little as possible. The last investor that we are going to be looking at in this video is Lilu of Himalaya Capital Management. But like the rest of the investors in this video, he hasn't really done much either. And that is the problem with tracking all of these high quality investors, is that most quarters you're not really getting a lot of newsworthy investments. But as we can see here, Lilu's biggest holding is still the Postal Savings Bank of China. He also has a very large stake in Bank of America, Google, Berkshire Hathaway, East West Bancorp and Apple. So a very simple portfolio structure for Lilu. But to summarize this video, like I've been saying, we aren't really seeing a lot of moves from these investors, which gives us an idea that the market, at least in the big caps, is pretty saturated. But I won't be making this video any longer today. I do want to ask you to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I want to thank you for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.